General Protocol Spaces, Banking on Freedom.
Welcome to General Bull 37 of N. This is the value of redundancy and redundancy. So that's just a little bit of a joke about the topic that we're going to talk about, which is all the many issues around native wallets and the difficulties, interesting things, challenges that we're facing as we think about this and working on it, and what we expect to see going forward, anything we've already solved, etc. It's kind of open-ended as to all the issues facing general native wallets that can do anything with Bitcoin Cash that's possible to be done. And there was a tweet recently by Bitcoin Cash Authis, which said, he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, all the things that you can do with your chain are worthless if they're not actually available to people in a useful way, which is where the XO and just generally native wallets come into play, which we've been talking about for a long time and now finally getting the chance to work on it. So I have, of course, thought about a lot of these topics a lot, but I haven't actually been building them myself at this point. Jim, you have been doing a lot on this topic, and you have, of course, have thought about these topics a lot for a long time also. So I thought I would start with asking you guys to share, like, what's your kind of top things on your mind that you think are, interesting, hard, or already solved, and that was interesting that we solved it, points about native wallets. Uname, could you just give a short list? Or
Yeah.
we could
So yeah. So I'm not sure if any of the problems are truly solved, and some pieces of software are kind of I wouldn't really call notorious, but they kind of don't solve any of them and just go ahead and do all the other things. So they are kind. So to start with, like the reason we mentioned redundancy in the title and redundancy is that the blockchain itself is a very, very highly redundant system. You got hundreds, if not thousands, of nodes out there. Each of them can restart each of them can carry on the blockchain, like completely basically completely independent of other nodes. And then you got miners and pools that actually continues and propagates the chain, and those are also very highly redundant systems that have many independent basically many independent and active backups that just takes over seamlessly. So it's kind of odd that when it comes to wallets, the quote unquote blockchain that people actually interact with, the coin that people actually interact with, a lot of the wallets take the quite a few wallets take the completely opposite approach. They got I would just say a few. They got like one monolithic server. It's very difficult to port to others. Um, and uh, and uh, when and when it comes to software, there is like one place to download. Sometimes on the Play Store, sometimes others. Um, and uh, and uh, yeah. Within the software itself, a lot of times it's, if you dig deeper into many of this software pieces, you can see that they're kind of built on a house of cards. They depend on many things. Any of them fail and the whole thing can go catastrophically. It sometimes not being available is like the least of your concern. Sometimes your money is actually stolen. And then you look at the back, well, at the very least, most of them at least give you the option of copying down your seed words, such that other wallets can act of sort of your redundancy in the worst case. But um, some of them don't, and many attempts have been made in terms of in terms of getting rid of the seed words, but a lot of them are just worse in general in terms of security. And then you don't know how bad it gets until it fails, right? And then finally there is state, which BCH people might be unfamiliar with. But yeah, if we get deeper and deeper into DeFi, we might sometimes have to deal with state, which is advanced way, basically another way of saying advanced ways of finding where your coins are and saving up how to spend them, um, which is not trivial. And if they are stored in one place that is subject to catastrophic failure, that is also a problem. It's having your coins render unspendable is in many ways just just as bad as getting your coin stolen. So yeah, all these problems, we can't pretend that we're gonna solve them all, but we do aim to take best practices and sometimes invent new, better ones when we build the wallet.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of open ended problems that are very serious problems that they have to sort out, and to some degree, the reason I mean they're so difficult, and that's why they haven't been tried before. Because if you actually try to approach these problems, it's like wait. They take a lot of thinking and planning and figuring out and decision making to make them work. Yeah, thank you. Jim, how about you? What has been on your mind as far as things that we have already solved, or that we've almost solved, or things that are still totally open ended? Where are you on the whole native wallet?
Oh, there's so much. So within the context of like redundancy, so the fundamental problem is with Peter script hash. We don't actually know what the contents of the locking script are because it's hashed. So that's fundamentally the problem. You don't know what the parameters that create that contract actually are, which means you have to store them somewhere. So the two options are either the service stores them. So in the case of like AnyHedge, for example, the settlement service will store the parameters of the AnyHedge contract. And with native wallets, the idea is that we kind of flip that, and the wallet itself stores, the contract and its parameters. And the service might do it as well. It might be both parties, but fundamentally at the moment, I don't think we have any wallets that actually will store like the parameters of a contract and the actual locking script of a contract.
All the bespoke ones are probably doing that, right? The bespoke wallets, like on BCH Bull or on Cauldron or whatnot, right? Like, but they're very, very specific to one contract.
Possibly, yeah. I haven't actually tried like any of the bespoke wallets, but yeah, possibly they are doing that. Yeah. In terms of the challenges, there's tons. One of the first ones is that in a lot of cases you do need like a multi-transaction flow. So for example, if you need to mint a token first and then put that into a contract, that's two transactions just there. So Jason Dreisner kind of has this concept of actions, which is basically just multiple transactions packed into one action. So first transaction might be minting a NFT or like a new token category or something like that. And second transaction might be then using that NFT or token. Other issues, resolving like variables. So the BCH Guru contract is really, really tricky because what that did is it does it like a data signature. So that's something that happens within the actual wallet itself. But that's not what the service should get returned to it. What the service should get returned to it is actually a SHA-256 of that signature, right? So it's kind of like within, you can't just give back like, the transaction. You actually have to feed some of the computer details in the wallet back to the BCH Guru service. That's a hard one to explain, sorry, but it's actually something that I think is going to pop up more and more. It's a really, really kind of complex thing to do appropriately. And
that is really interesting. I actually don't totally understand that issue. It's like an interactivity issue where it's taking multiple stages to build up a transaction.
Exactly. Or... Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Multiple stages, and you got to be able to pluck out the relevant stages for storage. So yeah, if you're doing,
because you can't just jump straight to the final thing where you're like, okay, here's all the variables. It's like there's some
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah. So that one's really tricky, and I don't know if anyone else has kind of worked with a contract that does that yet. Not with like Wallet Connect or something like that. Anyway, Wallet Connect can't do it. Otherwise, the BCH Guru guys would have actually just gone for that approach.
Right.
But yeah, that was like one of the big limitations there, and we just couldn't find a way to actually do it. Another one would be like combining values. Let's say you got like a NFT commitment field, and you need to store multiple values within that one commitment field, right? So trying to think of a good example. Let's say you're placing a bet. First variable would be like the amount that you're predicting something will be, or who you think will win the election, Trump, Harris, or something like that. And the second value in that same commitment should be like a payout address or something like that, right? So you got two values there that you got to stuff into a commitment. And it's kind of like that thing. How do you transparently present that information to the user that, these are two distinct variables without just, showing them like straight up bytecode or something like that? And create like a language that can then combine them into that single commitment field when it actually comes time to build the transaction. So yeah, I mean, these are just like a few things, but it's actually kind of a really complex problem to solve well, because at that point you're basically looking at a scripting language within the actual template system itself. And yeah, like from my point of view, I think there's actually a good solution to that one. The solution is to basically just use cache ASM within the templates. But yeah, there's so many different tricky things about all of this. Multi-sig's another issue that's really kind of tricky to solve. What if you don't have all the information that you need? How do you go to each party and actually grab that remaining information? Yeah, to me, that like these problems are solvable. In some sense, it's just kind of like how do you do it well? How do you standardize it as well? And how do you make it so that it's not too complex for people to actually use as well? That's the other really kind of tricky bit to it. But yeah, that's probably my input.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, making things not too complicated is an absolute for our purposes, right? Like working on the XO is one of our highest level things. Is that none of this can be hard once it gets to the user, and so even at the developer level, like you've got to add a lot more on top of the basics. You can't just throw the basics out there and then hope that things work, because it's complex. Making things work well and safely, like you said, and making them easy to use, it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of complexity under the hood to make all that happen. I wanted to expand on one of the ones you mentioned, the cache ASM. So that has been the best idea that I have heard for this other serious problem that I think is on the top list, which is if anybody's familiar with Ethereum, MetaMask, EVM, you go to some kind of app like a liquidity pool or some kind of DEX or something, and you say, hey, I want to make a trade, or I want to participate in this thing. And it sends you this big blob. It's this long blob of just letters and numbers. And a user looks at it and they obviously can't understand it at all. Like it's literally just a big blob of letters and numbers. And, it says, do you approve? And it's like, well, I guess so. And what else are you going to do but approve it? But that means that you are trusting that app to do the right thing, because it just gave you this big transaction and says, "Hey, sign this." And there's very little in the ways of some kind of gatekeeping that your wallet can't even do at that point. And so you're reduced to just trusting the app, which is a very bad situation. That's not a viable long-term digital money situation, right? Your wallet needs to be able to understand what's going on. And that was a problem that bothered me for a very long time. Like, how are we going to do that? So you get this blob, because it's similar to some degree on Bitcoin Cash. You get the app says we want to do something that says, hey, I want to do this. And it sends you like the template that Jim was talking about and some data. And then your wallet fills in some data on its side. So that's better. It's better than the other situation, because your wallet is filling in information on your side, like your address and your whatever. But then at the end of the day, it ends up with this big blob of a transaction. And how do you make sense of that? How does the user look at that and say, yes, that's what I wanted, in some way that's actually trustworthy by them? And so that's where the cache ASM idea is also useful, right, Jim?
Yeah, correct. So conceptually, the template has a list of variables, right? And then cache ASM is basically used to assemble those variables in the correct place within the template. So if you need to do what I said before and like have a NFT commitment, you'd take variable A, variable B, and then you'd concatenate them and that kind of thing. So yeah, it gives a ton of flexibility. It might be a little bit awkward for some people to use, people that aren't actually used to using like, a cache ASM like language, I guess, like an assembly language. But for the most part, what most people will want to do is pretty simple. And things like op add, just adding two numbers, concatenating, two values and things like that, isn't that complex. And, it does give a ton of flexibility in terms of what you can do with the templates.
Right. And that's on the part where it's constructing the transaction, the steps to construct the transaction. But the part I'm talking about is how do you present it to the user? Because you could have an app, or at least this is the image that I have, right? I don't think anybody's actually implemented this yet. You have that transaction blob, and if you have some kind of bespoke setup in your wallet, and your wallet understands how this particular type of contract or transaction works, of course it can present it to you in a very pretty, nice, easy to understand way. But we're talking about general purpose wallets that need to be able to do anything and deal with any kind of contract that's possible. And so when you get to that level, you can't have a pre-made, pretty nice graphical, user interface for looking at things. And so one of the solutions is to take all that template stuff that Jim was talking about that was used to create the transaction, and then having another layer on top of that where you use cache ASM, which is just the language of the Bitcoin Cash network, the virtual machine. And you use that language on top of that to kind of assemble all that data into a human readable kind of sentence, or 2 or 3 sentences that says, you're putting this much money into an AnyHedge contract. The leverage is this. The maturity date is this, something like that, where it actually parses it out and gives you a human readable thing. And the reason that would be valuable is that the alternative is something like putting JavaScript into your template or something like that, which is a very open-ended security software terrible problem to put that kind of code into a trusted system. And so anything that runs on the Bitcoin Cash virtual machine is at a different level of security and being able to trust that it's not going to break something. So that's what I was thinking. Did you still think that's a viable way to present transactions to people?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And yeah, you're right about the JavaScript thing, right? I mean, it's not even like security is obviously a huge concern, but it's not just security; it's also portability. Is a Python wallet going to be able to implement that? Is a C++ wallet going to want to implement a whole JavaScript engine just for supporting these templates? So Cache ASM, it's a pretty simple solution, and it's pretty lightweight, and it's already probably like integrated into a lot of wallets already, to some degree anyway.
Right. And it as long as you're running contracts, you have to be using the cache ASM anyway to run contracts and simulate things. So yeah, so it's an interesting problem though. That's still a kind of open-ended, at least unsolved in any kind of practical form yet. Like, how do you translate all these generic contract details into something that a user can reasonably understand and say, okay, yeah, that sounds right. I approve that. Because if you can't do that, you really haven't gained much. You're still in a very bad place in terms of security and safety. And of course, some people will never care, and they will just not trust. I mean, they will trust anything. They don't care at all. But it's very important, I think, for our designs that there's a level of, if you want to do it, you can. Whereas with most of the other systems where the app is making decisions, even if you want to, you can't really understand well what's going on with it. So yeah, it'll be important to have these levels of availability of information for users for safety.
You make another important point there as well, just regarding a user trusting a template, right? So anyone could put together a template, put that description that you were talking about. This is sending X amount to this address, blah 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 blah, and that's not really secure, because I mean, whoever's created that template could just lie about what the template's actually doing. So template auditability is like a really big issue as well. We want to have a system where templates can be vouched for. It can kind of be where you can hash the template, and someone can then, a trusted party, whether it's the wallet creators themselves or maybe a trusted third party, can basically say, yeah, look, I've reviewed this template. It's doing exactly what it says it's going to be doing. And, that can actually be displayed to the user in the wallet as, a trusted template, as opposed to, something that's untrusted. We don't know if it's actually doing what it's saying it's going to be doing.
Right. And for anybody who's listening who doesn't know about these templates, this is the idea that rather than a wallet constructing transactions in some known certain way and then just doing things, which works well when the only thing that you do is send and receive, which is what basically all wallets do today. Send and receive is very, very simple type of transaction. But if you're actually going to access all the power of what P2P money can do, you've got to be able to do more than send and receive. Send and receive are, of course, very important. But if that's all you can do, then you've got 99% of the horsepower just doing nothing on the chain. So the wallet has to be able to make use of all that power. And these templates are the way that I'm not sure if the idea originated with Jason Draisner, but I think it's been floating around for a very long time. But it's just the idea that you have these templates which say this is a type of transaction and all this kind of information around it, such as how to present the transaction to the user, like I was discussing, how to construct it, how to what kind of transactions can you then do after you've created this contract. Jim was talking about the actions. All of this information would get packed up into a template, and that template describes the whole type of transaction that you can do. And then your wallet would need to have like a trusted list where it says, yes, this is the type of template that's used to send money. And this is, or send and receive simple money like we normally do. That would be one template, how to do that. And then there would be another template for doing like multi-signature wallets or specialized multi-signature wallets or any hedge contracts. All the different types of things that you could do would just be boiled down to this template of the transaction and how to construct it and how to present it and communicate about it. Is that a fair description?
Let me try to.
I think so. Yeah.
So usually when you download a wallet, you basically trust your coins to that piece of software when you download it. The downside is that you typically don't download a wallet very often, and they also move very slowly. So it's very difficult for wallets themselves to adapt to new protocols. That doesn't happen permissionlessly, and that happens very slowly. On the other hand, a lot of wallets on other chains, you basically go to a website and then you rubber stamp whatever the website may do whatever the hell they want to your coins. That is also not a terribly good solution. So templates are basically, you have a wallet, and then within that wallet you may choose to sometimes trust things that caters to specific kinds of transactions, just as you do when you first download your wallet, but you don't do that very often, and you certainly just don't go to whatever website and rubber stamped it. So I just want to add it in a concise way.
Yeah. There's a lot of, comparison. There's a lot of things that your web browser is doing under the hood, where it's not letting you do stupid things, not letting you do dangerous things. And that's something that a good native wallet will also have to do. And this isn't about gatekeeping, right? This is about not letting you do things that are obviously and extremely dangerous, or at the very least, you put like a approval thing where it's like, hey, you're about to do something that we have no idea what you're doing. And most likely you also have no idea what you're about to do. Are you really sure that you want to do that? So it's making sure that there's this default layer of safety in front of users. Because when we're talking about a handful of power users, who cares how things go? They can sort things out for themselves and they can fend for themselves. But when you're talking about thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of users, you can't do that. You have to have things just work, and you don't have to think about them at a high level. And any kind of power stuff needs to be under the hood, some kind of control panel or advanced panel or whatever that people can get down into if they want. Jonathan, are you on speaker here?
Yes.
Hey. So what kind of things, we just started off with the things on the top of your mind related to native wallets, because this is an ongoing topic, right? Where in the past, when we first started talking about it, people were like, what are you talking about? We have no idea what you're saying. The words don't make sense. It's too abstract. But now it's starting to get real. And I was wondering what kind of things are on the top of your mind, like things that we have solved or that are still unsolved or that you're working on.
Well, I jumped in late, so I don't know exactly everything I said before, but I'll touch on some of the things I heard after I joined here. The first thing being that these templates originating from JSON, I think the libauth-specific templates and those structures definitely did, but he probably had some kind of inspiration from earlier. As for what the templates actually do, I like to think of it as like a transformation layer that takes some specific source of truth at the bottom, and it creates two different outputs. Like you take the same source of truth and you tell this template, give me A and give me B. A, in this case, the first thing here is raw transaction script, right? Make me a transaction that follows this template's pattern. And this is good for the virtual machine and for the Bitcoin Cash network. They are very well suited to understand what those transactions are going to do, and you can broadcast them and send them over the network. And technically, the network is going to be happy with the outcomes. The B part is when you start from the same kind of sources of truth, and instead of creating transactions for them, you create human readable information out of it, like labels and descriptions and names and titles, and things that humans can reason about. And so you're using the same raw data, and this is, I assume, where the cache assembly comes in as like a unified language to be able to do both of these things, where you can mix human readable strings with evaluations of the underlying data, because the underlying data is, of course, structured according to the Bitcoin VM. So that's my recap of what we've been talking about so far. The topic of this there's two today. There's redundancy and redundancy, though. And from this perspective, there's mostly a matter of like, what's the big distinction between the current set of wallets we have and the potential dangers of the new set of wallets that we're about to make. And so in our old wallet style set, I'll call these legacy or classic wallets by now, we have things like pay-to-public key hashes, and we have things like HD wallets that allows for like deterministically creating new addresses for every time you use them, which is good for privacy and also security to some degree. Now, these old classic versions, they are deterministics in the sense that we have agreed by writing out standards how to find all related data needed to operate these wallets. If you're going by an HD wallet, you might have heard something like BIP44 that tells you how to go from a seed phrase, derive your keys, and then create addresses from them. And since this process is entirely deterministic, all you need in order to recover all of your funds and all of your history is to start from that secret phrase, that seed phrase. And then from there on, you just have to follow the process according to the rules that was set out. The new wallet that we are trying to build,
before you go on, can I reframe that just a little bit for the audience?
Yeah,
sure. What Jonathan means when he says deterministic is, if I boil it down, it's I take my seed phrase, the 12 words or 24 words, and I put them into one wallet, and I get like all these details and transaction history and balance and whatnot. And I take that same seed phrase and I put it into another wallet, and it gives me the same thing, more or less. So now I've got the same thing on both, and it's great. And that's kind of what he means by deterministic. You don't need anything else but that seed phrase, and then you can figure everything else out. But then he's going to go on to the next part.
Right. So the new wallets that we're trying to make are these templated native wallets. Since they are able to do a wide variety of things, there's going to be a lot of new things invoked here, new things that the old system simply cannot do by design. And in order to accommodate for those, we are going to need to remember things. We're going to need to have some kind of state that tells us what we have done and what our current state is. Particularly important, this is for smart contracts that needs to remember things when you create them so that they can use that information when you continue to interact with them over time. For the legacy wallet, the pay-to-public key hash and similars, they have, you could argue that they are also stateful, but that they hold no actual data in their state, and so we can just imagine everything we need and move on from there to make it work. But you can't go from a seed phrase or a single secret and generate all the agreements that a contract has. Like say we're looking at an NaH contract. When you make it, you have to define like who's the oracle's going to be and what are all these parameters going to be. When you make a flip starter contract, like who are we going to pay to? When you make various different types of contracts, all these contain information that isn't directly derived from the original secret, but something that we agree upon between the parties involved in those transactions. And many of these need to have this information in order to continue to interact with that data. So for these new wallets, it's simply not enough to just copy the seed phrase and know that, hey, all my money is safe and sound because I took these 12 words and I put them on some steel plates in a safe, and then I dug the safe down in my backyard. It's not going to be enough because now you need to also store all that related data in between. And this is going to be one of the largest challenges to solve in a good way.
And for anyone who's listening and thinks, wait, why doesn't EVM or Ethereum have that type of problem? Actually, it does have that problem, but all that state is stored directly on the an EVM blockchain, and it's a huge part of why those chains cannot scale, because all this state gets stored, all this state is part of the transaction and then becomes part of the global state, and then you have to order everything, which leads to huge MEV problems and uh, scalability problems, where you can't just have more and more users because they start to collide with each other as they're trying to make contracts and so forth. So that part is much easier on an EVM because it just stores it all. But also, due to that design choice, the chain can't scale. And so we're going the other way, where we say, look, it's unacceptable to not be able to scale. We have to be able to reach global scale. And if you're going to do that, we have to find another way to do that.
Yeah, so actually, if you wanted to have something that is more EVM-like, you could, in theory, make it so that your wallet only agrees to take part in contract, where all state is encapsulated perfectly in NFT commitments, and have you send all these tokens. It would be a very complicated setup, and it would be a catastrophic setup when it comes to privacy, because the state is public. I wouldn't advise going down that route, but I can imagine like one or two protocols trying it out in the future, because it's technically possible, and having like some kind of simplicity benefit if they do it before a native wallet comes out, for example.
Yeah, that's right. And what you said is exactly right. There are lots of potential in-between solutions. One of them would be to kind of emulate EVM, where you throw the data into some kind of NFT commitments, and it's all just sitting there. So you could go and discover it, right? That is one solution to discoverability of all your contracts and the things that you're participating in. But yeah, the other far end of the spectrum is, everything is just data that you have to store. And I suppose that we're going to find solutions that are somewhere in between, or a mix, right? Where some of it's deterministic, like deterministic to the greatest degree possible will be good, so that you don't lose anything if you lose your data. But then there are going to be other things where maybe you really will have to have your data. And that's why the topic was redundancy, as Jonathan mentioned. You really don't want to
So
lose that data.
yeah, I just want to chime in with a practical and actually pretty common example of how this manifests. So the most common example of this is actually multisig, and most people don't use multisig, so that's not really a problem for them, but a lot of people also do. And most of the time you probably won't screw up, so that's not a concern. But so, for example, if you have a 2 out of 3 multisig, and so your intuition might tell you that, okay, 2 out of 3 means that Alice, Bob, and Charlie each copies their own 12 word seed. And so if people ever lose their everybody will lose their laptops, as long as Alice and Bob have their seed, the Charlie can go screw himself, and that will be enough for Alice and Bob to retrieve the funds, right? Actually, no. Alice, in addition to their own seeds, Alice and Bob also need to uh, at least either have a copy of their wallets or the public key of Alice, Bob, and Charlie in order to reconstruct their wallets, or else they would not be able to spend their funds despite having two seats. So that is a already very common scenario that many people don't know about, and it doesn't require like really advanced contracts.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is the one thing in Bitcoin so far that have almost cost me money, actually. And it goes worth than Uname says here, because not only do you need to know the public key of the third party rather than just having 2 of the key pairs, you also need the order of the keys. And for 2 of 3, you can kind of try all the variations. but it quickly becomes untenable when you start doing a larger number of parties to this.
And
I can only imagine the nightmare if you have 15.
Right. There's a valid, not a valid, a very important point here that kind of emerges from what Uname said, which is, most, probably vast majority of crypto users have never even used a multi-sig. Multi-signature is where, for example, the three of us right now who are talking make a wallet, and to spend from that wallet, two of us have to approve. Any two of us, not a particular two of us. So one person can't spend. If two people agree, they can spend. If all three agree, of course, you can also spend. And so that's the idea of the multi-sig. And there's this extra data that in normal cases you wouldn't need. But here it is. You have to keep track of it with multi-sig. But the important point that Uname said was, most people have never used it. But, I'm old, so I remember like the Back to the Future and, like where we're going, we don't need roads. I think it's to some degree like that with the basic send and receive. Once you get to the place that your wallets can understand everything that Bitcoin Cash can do, the old style of send and receive will sometimes be seen as archaic, or maybe just very simple. Like that will be your hot wallet, like something you would carry around with you and be like, whatever, I've got some amount of money on there, but for where I live, it's a safe amount of money, and I'm not that worried about it. If it just completely got destroyed, I would not be devastated. But for anything more than that, probably people will have things in something called vaults, where it's like a bank vault where you've put your money in there, and if you want to get money out, you've got to have like a 3-day waiting period, or a 1-day waiting period, or a 1-hour waiting period, whatever it is. You could set up whatever you want. Oh, and there's maybe a smaller amount that you can spend any amount of that doesn't have to be subject to that timing limitation. Or in this wallet, there's 2 parents and 3 kids, and either one of the parents can spend, but for one of the kids to spend, they have to have the approval of one of the parents or something like that. I think these kind of wallets will become ubiquitous and used all over the place. And so that's a very important problem to solve, that these smart contracts have to work for everybody and be really easy to use for everybody without thinking about it and without knowing any of the details. So that's the kind of problem that we're trying to solve, is making this all extremely easy to use. I got a question from Cheap Lightning, who's in the audience here, Cheapy. He said, what tools and apps will be available first? I think he's talking about XO, right? The project, if you go to xo.cash, you can see the project that General Protocols has just very recently started, still in the very early stages. But I don't know, Jonathan, Jim, what do you think will be the first things that are available?
Like tongue-in-cheek answer, the first one will be send and receive.
Yes.
Because
Fair.
before we have that working through the stack, then how do you validate everything kind of works? The more like in-depth answer is that we have a list of things that we are looking at while we are building, and that we intend to make sure that it's absolutely going to function for these things. And apart from that, the obvious thing that we're going to actually make happen is, of course, the NHedge contract, the BCH Bowl, and things that relate to General Protocols, income stream. So yeah, expect that to come kind of first.
So, and before that, there's going to be, because if you look at the site, you'll see there's at least 2 parts to this project, right? There's the XO wallet, which is the thing that we're going to make that we wish we didn't have to make, which puts all this power that we're talking about into people's hands. And then there's the underlying XO stack, which powers such a wallet. Any number of wallets, anybody who wants to make a wallet or an app would build on top of this XO stack, and probably some new standards that we'll have to come up with. So the XO stack will necessarily come first, because we're going to be building all this open source out in the open once it gets to a minimum level of readiness, or just experimental readiness. And so the XO stack will develop out in the open and that will be available first. That would be the first thing you would see. And that'll have examples of, okay, you're using this stack, which lets you build an app, lets you build a wallet. And here's some example code of how you would use it. Here's an example app that you could build using the Exo stack. I think that'll be the first thing. Is that fair, Jim, to say?
Yeah. I mean, people might see teasers of a wallet before they see the stack, but generally speaking, yeah. I mean, the wallets or the stack's a prerequisite to the wallet, right? So the stack will, be available before the wallet is.
Right. And actually, I hadn't mentioned this yet on this space, but this is a really critical point, that this Exo stack that we're talking about is the real meat and bones of what it is we're trying to accomplish, because we're trying to lower the bar for entry for app developers and entrepreneurs in Bitcoin Cash. And also, of course, for users. But to do that, you have to have a stack that is generally very powerful, can do everything, and helps you to do it in an easy way. And once you've done that, then it becomes relatively easy for people to build like they do with Square or some other traditional finance tools. Yes, so the Exo stack, this underlying thing that will be used to make apps, make wallets, make websites, make mobile apps, that's going to be the real core of everything, of the power that's available. And then the Exo wallet will be the thing that we create on top of that to start putting it into people's hands and showing, hey, this is the way we need to keep building and going forward. So I had a different topic, which was, Jim, recently people have been talking a lot about Wallet Connect and Electron Cash, and you click this button on the site that says connect to your wallet and that kind of thing. Could you kind of first summarize, like, what is it that Wallet Connect is? Because I think a lot of people don't quite understand what it is. And then how does that interact with what we're talking about with Exo and native wallets?
Oh, I'm going to be pretty bad at explaining this, I think. But to put simply, Wallet Connect is basically just a way to communicate from a dApp to your wallet. And what it's essentially doing is just kind of taking data from your wallet for the most part and constructing transactions within the dApp itself, and then just sending it back to the wallet to then sign it. So you can do some cool stuff with it, but at the same time, it's kind of more designed around like the way Ethereum works, and the account model generally. So for BCH, we need something a lot more complicated to be able to do, some of the more advanced kind of smart contract flows that we can now support. And what was your second question, sorry?
Yeah, no, it's basically just a way to communicate between a wallet and an app.
Yeah.
And Wallet Connect is especially not especially, currently it's for relatively traditional or dumb wallets that don't really know what to do.
It just uses placeholders. So it's like, the dApp constructs like a transaction, and then you'll have like I can't remember exactly, but like, a 65 0 bytes to say, all right, insert the signature here. So you send that back to the wallet, it finds those 65 0 bytes, and then, creates a signature.
Right. So that's the like current kind of crop of dApps on Bitcoin Cash. But then, so the second question was, what's the interaction of Wallet Connect with this whole native stack and native wallet ecosystem that we're imagining? Because some people might be thinking like you're just going to throw Wallet Connect away, but that's not the case, right? So, but I can't explain it exactly. So, can you explain like how those mash together?
Yeah. All right. So instead of the dApp constructing a transaction, the dApp will feed the wallet a template, and the wallet will say, yeah, I approve the dApp to use this template. And the dApp can then feed variables into that template back to signing. So it's still kind of a similar flow. It just, and this is just one aspect of it as well. This is one entry point. These templates don't necessarily have to work within the context of a dApp. They can be internal to the wallet, for example. But we still do like intend to support essentially a Wallet Connect esque kind of flow, where you can have like a website that connects to your wallet, and instead of just working on like a very basic transaction structure, as Wallet Connect currently does, it can work with that template and have all that power that comes with using the templates that we're talking about.
Okay, perfect. So the Wallet Connect is still going to be there, and it's still going to be useful. It'll be one option of how to have a wallet and an app communicate, but it's not really doing anything smart, right? Is that fair to say? It's just sending stuff back and forth.
It's a transport, yeah. So Wallet Connect itself really isn't a smart protocol. Like, that's not to say like it's a bad protocol. I just mean it's not a smart protocol. It is basically just a transport, a way to get information from here over to there, from the dApp to the wallet. And what really matters is the payloads that you send across, what information is actually contained in that transport, in those payloads. And that's currently where it's kind of constrained. It doesn't have a lot of the power that we will need in future for a lot of the potential that Bitcoin Cash now has with smart contracts.
Right. Okay. So if anybody has heard of the thing Jim is working on called Cash Connect, that's more on the payload side, right? Where the transport might be Wallet Connect, but it's being smarter about what it sends back and forth and how it makes decisions to fill in a template. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, that's good. I actually wasn't 100% sure that I had the right picture there. And it's been like that as we go through this stuff. There's things that I think I understand, and then later I realize, wait, I haven't actually thought that through, and I didn't understand it. But yeah, so Wallet Connect isn't something that's going to disappear. It will just keep getting used. But what's going on under the hood is going to be different. So I had another thing on my list here, which was, very, very, very open-ended topics, which are both very painful because there's no solution. There's no answer. There's no easy way to say, oh, this is what we should do. But they're also very exciting because you can come up with whatever you want. There's like a wide, the field is kind of open to coming up. And the part that's most exciting for me is the user experience, which is, how do people deal with money? How do they interact with services and products and retail and purchasing things and selling things, things that you do with money or digital identity? Like, how does it look to work with those in the future? And I think, if you go forward 10 or 20 years and you look back, it'll be like, oh my God, the crypto back then was so primitive. It was so incredibly primitive, and you had to be such an expert basically to be able to use it. And now, it'll be like with mobile phones today. People don't know what a file system is. They don't know what an operating system is. They don't know what any of the shit going on under the hood is. The phone just works, and it can do a lot of things, and it's very powerful for people. And a big part of that is that the user experience has massively improved, depending on your perspective. But from a general user's perspective, average person out of 8 billion people's perspective, phones are so much easier to use than PCs were, the previous generation of computing devices. So on that UX topic, does anybody have like some particular ones that you're excited where you think, hey, we can really do something better that's different and great to make money more useful and easy for people to use? Or even simple ones, right? Like maybe not getting out too far ahead of ourselves, but even something simple that you're kind of excited about. Jonathan has always had these stories that he tells, and it's like story time for me, where he tells this story of how user experience is going to be and how it's going to be so amazing.
Yeah, I don't have good long form stories for this one yet. I will have in the future.
All right. Long form stories. Yeah, so there's a really simple one, which I thought, Jim, and I wonder what your thoughts are on this, where we had a mock up of like, here's a liquidity pool and you want to participate in it. And at the top of the app was like a connect to wallet. And in my imagination, wait, why is that there? That shouldn't be there. That shouldn't be necessary. You should have something that's like, you click the button because I want to participate, and it's then going to make things happen in the background. And if it needs to ask you a question, it will. Or if it needs you to do something, it will. But if not, you should never have to click something like connect to wallet. And do you have any kind of feeling on that, how we're going to solve that kind of thing, Jim, to where you can make things easier to use and not have to have people know that they need to connect and stuff like that? Like, can we move those things into the background, maybe with the P2P setups?
It depends on the scenario. Like with something like Wallet Connect, right? You implicitly have to establish like a session between the DApp and the wallet. At the same time, there's Wallet Connect's just one transport, right? Just one entry point. So it could be possible if there's things that are just, kind of like a single action, right, that you want to execute. You wouldn't really have to necessarily connect. You could just basically, or negotiate a session. So you could just send, a template across to the wallet. No, even then, you'd still got to know who the wallet is. You'd still got to know how to reach the wallet, actually. So I don't know if that would work either.
Yeah, I think you have to, but the process can be simplified, right? Like when they say, I want to participate, and if it's already aware of your wallet that you're using, it just goes and talks to it, and you don't need to do anything.
But there'll almost always have to be that first,
Can I jump in?
Identity.
Yeah, the connect part is kind of a legacy thing that is oriented towards the idea that the app is the one that does the work. Right? The app needs to know what your address is. The app needs to go on the blockchain and figure out where your UTXOs is and whatnot. In the template world, we don't need that anymore, because the template is going to contain information, says that there's a key needed here, there's something like this needed here, we need an output of this value in order for this to work out. And the app can now, with these templates, make the request to the wallet without knowing or understanding if the wallet is even able to satisfy that request at all. And the wallet can on its own figure out those missing pieces and inform the app, with a partial sign thing or with the final transaction or whatever. So there isn't the same need for that connect part under the templated structure as it is under the existing Wallet Connect set.
Yes, and that connect part can even be very dangerous, because really what it is in a lot of cases you're signing something. You really don't want to sign things unless it's absolutely necessary. You're signing an approval for this app to do something, or you're signing.
I don't think that's right.
The
connect part is the session initiation for Wallet Connect. It's a very specific thing, and it doesn't use any signatures along there. It just provides information across a relay somewhere, right? Or have I misunderstood that, Jim?
No, you got that correct. It's session negotiation, and then after session negotiation, you can just send payloads between the app and wallet.
Sorry, I guess I'm thinking more on the EVM side, where when you click connect, you're actually approving something in a lot of cases.
You can authenticate
information, so it's a privacy loss at minimum.
Right, and privacy loss is a big deal. Yeah. Okay. I stand corrected. Maybe in most cases you're not actually approving anything, but yeah, you're losing privacy. And anyway, like cutting away all those steps and cutting away all those technicalities that, yes, they're necessary, but how do you really push them into the background? Like, for example, when you click on join the liquidity pool, if it's not connected, if it doesn't know about your wallet, maybe it pops up a thing and is like, hey, scan this with your phone. And that's it. You don't need
Oh
to,
yeah,
to do
similar
anything.
things. So, like a good example would be Wallet Connect versus something like BIP70 or JSON Payment Protocol, right? And with these templates, I mentioned before, like you got the concept of a transport, right? Wallet Connect's just one particular transport. But in future, we might have HTTPS transports, right, that these templates can go across. So in that case, it'd be if you only needed like a unidirectional kind of flow, you could end up with a situation where it's just, click to do something and invokes your wallet, and your wallet basically fetches that template and it's all done automatically. But if you need a two-way communication that's constantly happening, at that point, you're probably going to need a session of some sort.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I
Fair
think
enough.
another way to look at it is the app going to provide information that is outside of my wallet's capabilities? For example, when you're talking about the liquidity provider pool, like for any hedge that we're going to build eventually, that's going to come with the dashboard, right? So you know which money you have and what's the status with that money. Are you making money or not? Things like that. And the template isn't sufficient in order to provide that extra information about like how have things progressed over time. The template isn't a great utility for making pretty graphs or making some other metadata available. And in that context, connecting with the site and sharing like who you are in this role would allow that application to provide those dashboards.
Right. And still be able to minimize your kind of privacy exposure. You're just getting the absolute minimum. Because in a dumb wallet setup, you have to give it all kinds of inappropriate information. Like, here's all my addresses. Here's my public keys. You have to give it stuff that you really shouldn't be handing out like candy. Yes. It'll be very specific what you give to such a site. Did you have any user experience type things that you imagine are going to be way better off in the near or medium term future?
I am just in general looking to not have to compromise a lot in in security for user experience and in user experience for security anymore. I want that sweet middle ground. That is all.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a fair
I'll
point.
also jump
Doing
in and
better
say that,
than others have done.
The multi-sig use case might actually become user friendly. So we talked about that a moment ago and how bad it was that you have to know a bunch of extra information and whatnot. Well, the native stack and the wallet takes care of that and stores the data with good redundancy. So you don't have to worry anymore about losing any third party's public keys in your 2 or 3 multi-sigs.
Yep. And it should just be easy. Like, hey, start a family wallet. Okay. How many people? 5, 2 parents who are authorized and 3 kids who need a parent. Okay. That's it. You don't need to do anything else. And now you've got this fully functioning, well-behaved, family vault where it can be both your savings and your spending or however you want to set it
Absolutely.
up. Yeah.
And then at some point in life, you're going to come across the point where your kids are growing and you need to start, saving some money for a college fund or something. So you go to coolcashtemplates.com, you search for college fund, you scan a QR code, and your wallet says like, hey, do you want to set up a college fund? Who's the parties who's going to save for and who are going to save? Like, where are things going? And I have all these great user experiences that kind of lets everything be human and have good relations between everything. I'm really looking forward to that one.
And yeah, put it into a kind of can't do evil situation, right? Where it's like, well, there's a lot of traditional finance where you're in a bad standoff situations where technically your lawyer could spend this money, or technically one of 2 spouses could take all the money and send it somewhere, or a lot of little uncomfortable reality things where these setups would do away with that. And it's very clear who can spend money, who did spend money and so forth, right? The signatures will show who spent the money and all that. I had one more on my list, which Jim, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here again, but it's a really fun topic whenever we've talked about it, which is what does the P2P tooling, like let's imagine that the P2P under the hood tooling stuff is maybe better than it is today. It's how it should be, you know. What kind of things are you thinking are possible or going to surprise people, or things you'd like to try with the P2P technology? And when P2P, I don't mean like a blockchain. I mean peer-to-peer communication between like your mobile and a server, your mobile and another mobile device, and so forth.
If it works, lots of cool stuff. So there's a lot of like, that's a big kind of caveat there, if it works. But one cool thing that I'm really kind of interested in is actually running like, this isn't just, you know, about wallet to wallet communication, but even websites and infrastructure, basically being able to run those at home using a P2P protocol, which means you can avoid like, you know, DNS entirely, basically. And you're able to like decentralize everything. So to give an example, imagine like being able to run chain graph at home, right? Running your own node at home, but then having it being able to be accessed from a web page. So chain graph at the moment, I think you'd probably want like at least a 1 terabyte like hard drive to store all the data. And that's pretty expensive to do with like a cloud hosting service. Whereas with like this P2P stuff, you can basically make it so someone could run chain graph at home and have like a front end web page actually be able to connect to your home instance without any additional configuration. And one of the other good things there is you wouldn't necessarily just be limited to, you know, this front end, this website connecting to your chain graph instance. It could, you know, kind of have several redundancies actually set up. So with the P2P stuff, basically you get like decentralization and you get massive redundancy as well for actual services built on Bitcoin Cash. So that's a big one. There's lots more that I've kind of thought out. I just can't think of them right now. Things like map services as well that kind of become decentralized. Potentially even stuff like Oracle services. And then there's obviously, you know, wallet to wallet communication. There's actually a ton of potential there, but I'm still not certain how well all of this will work, just because, you know, you're inherently restricted by firewalls, you know, being even with like mobile networks and that kind of thing. They all have like, you know,
right.
Not all of them, but a lot of them have firewalls and all that kind of thing. And hole punching isn't always 100% reliable, and we kind of want high reliability with, you know, what we're doing. But yeah, potentially it could be very good just from the point of view of like decentralizing our infrastructure, stuff like Fulcrum servers, chain graph, and allowing people to basically run all this stuff on like a Raspberry Pi at home and make it available to the public as well, accessible through the web.
And I think probably vast majority of people don't really understand how centralized DNS, which is basically when you put in a website and you say like, you know, bitcoin.com or whatever it is you put in, bchbull.com, that would be the better one. When you put that in, like, how does that actually get you to a website? The way that's all set up is really quite centralized. And that's a big risk, right? Because anything that's centralized is easy to censor, is easy to capture, is easy to redirect, is easy to monitor, and so forth. So these efforts to decentralize and kind of pull away from those central dependencies like DNS is a good thing. Good thing to try.
And it's not like unprecedented either. Like Australia actually blocks quite a few domains. Open subtitles, I think, has been blocked in Australia, for example. So it's not a hard thing for governments to do, to block domains, and it is actually being done already. So being able to decentralize that infrastructure, I think will be really, really good.
Yeah, it'll keep people honest, right? Similar to money, similar to P2P electronic cash. When you've got an alternative, it starts to make everybody else be more honest also, right? I did have one more actually I thought of while we were talking through that. Jonathan, did you have any thoughts on native wallets and the intersection with digital identity, where you want to be able to prove, this is me on social networking without having to just say, Twitter can give away my account to anyone, which has happened to a lot of people, Instagram or whomever. Those companies, for whatever reasons, insider stuff going on or hack or whatever, they give accounts to somebody else. And, having an identity that's in your possession, that's my identity, nobody else can control it. Is there some kind of intersection with the native wallets and identity? Because I know you've thought about identity a lot.
There is, but contrary to like my time back when I worked on cash accounts, I'm not far along enough to be able to say with certainty what it is. And I know that like future of identity will rely on cryptography, so key pairs and doing that thing is the basis of it. But how you tie that up with the decentralization aspect and how you make apps and services work in a good way with it isn't really something that I have like down on paper yet. Something I want to look at in the future, though.
Right, and we will, I'm sure. But one of the aspects is that digital identity so far, which comes down to like if you're a techie, like PGP keys or something like that, has a horrible record of like keeping ownership of those identities. And wallets are a massively better place because you've got your money there and you're very strongly incentivized to keep track of that. And so if you have a wallet that knows how to deal with money, knows how to deal with cryptography, it's really, really well placed to say, hey, I need to sign into this website. Make me a new identity. I want a new identity for this website. I don't want it to have any connection whatsoever to any other identity. I want a fresh identity for this website. Your wallet is set up really well to do that and to keep track of it better than any other systems that are out there. So yeah, I think it's gonna integrate well with identity payments and all those things are gonna come together to some degree.
Yeah. So that argument that your wallet has a stronger incentive to keep the keys secure and therefore is well suitable as an identity manager is something that has been floating around since the BitID times. It was supposed to be a solution to the problem that Squirrel had. And I also incorporated in Cache ID about when I worked on Cache ID, I tried to figure out like why did BitID never take off, right? If this is the problem and that is the solution, then why did it not take off? My view landed on at the time that the reason it didn't take off is that it provided almost no value for the people who are building the services to which you identify. And currently, all the problems with the existing identity systems do not fall from a responsibility perspective on the service provider that you're identifying to. If you use a poor and crappy identity mechanic, say emails and sending, recovery codes in plain text over the internet that any agency that has any name worth its salt can easily intercept and do whatever they want to, then that's on you, the user, right? And so you'll see that email is still being widely used across the variety of our internet simply because there is no strong motivation to change it. With Cache ID, I planned or tried to kind of resolve that by giving value to the app and service developers as part of the protocol to make it easier for them to acquire new users, making the sign-up schemes quicker and more convenient for both the user and the service providers. But that too has not taken off. And I don't know if it's because Bitcoin Cash is so small relative to all the other things in the market, or if there's even more things that need to be done before you go somewhere and actually take off. What I can say is that when I worked on Cache ID, I was operating under a not single key, but single key per service perspective, and there were no good ways to do key rotation, and so there was some security aspect that weren't ideal. But in a cash token blockchain world where you can encode your identity connections as NFT tokens, meaning that if you hold the token and present that you are able to move it from one place to another, then you have proven that you are the person who previously were able to move this token, and therefore should be the one that has access to the things that this token grants access to. In that world, there might be other benefits that you can give to service providers. For example, if you look at things like games, like MMORPGs or whatever, where you have accounts, and if you have games where trading of accounts is allowed, then now you can streamline both the account creation and the market side of things. You can also make it so that you can do backups and key rotation in ways that you couldn't do before. There's a bunch of value to be had when you tie in not only the key, but the NFT itself. But as I said earlier, I haven't gone through and got into a headspace where I can say, yeah, this is a great thing and we should build it yet.
Right. I was just going to say let me throw one specific example that Jonathan mentioned there, the gaming and making it valuable to the producers, to the creators, the ones setting up services. So if you have a game and you want people to make an account and they use their wallet to make an account, then, he said, if they want the account to be sellable, usually companies have absolutely zero interest in that, but not because of any kind of moral reason. In reality, it's just because it's a huge pain in the ass and legal issues and so forth. But if you had it set up to where more or less, okay, you can sell your account and we get a cut of the value when you do that, the company does somehow, probably most companies would be really okay with that in a lot of cases, maybe going forward, not for existing games, but going forward. So yeah, you could create value for them, that they could create it for themselves by using these smarter ways to set up accounts and identity. Sorry, Jim.
They could also shirk some responsibility in that regard and not have the legal risk if the system itself allows it rather than they allow it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think another use case that's going to become more pertinent as well is spam prevention. So, if you with AI and all that kind of thing and all the noise that it's probably going to create in future on media platforms and that kind of thing, social media platforms, the fact that you can kind of you've got this cryptographic identity that's also tied to a payment system. So even the fact that you can kind of make users put down a deposit very easily, right, can kind of help eliminate a lot of the spam that you would otherwise get, in the sense that it would become costly at that point to actually spam a service with fake accounts. So I can actually see it being very useful there.
Even very minimal amounts would make a huge difference in the economics of accounts, like social media accounts.
Yeah. Well, I even on developers.cash, just to stop spam there, I ended up implementing a cash capture when people submit entries where you have to pay 5 cents or something. But it was more for a test. Conceptually, I think that might actually work to prevent spam in future.
Interesting. All right. Well, we've gone over a bunch of topics, and this is something that we're going to continue working on. It's very important to general protocols and to people who aren't at general protocols. This idea of native wallets and a native stack that can, totally really unlock all the power that's there on Bitcoin Cash. So we're going to keep working on it. And for anyone who's listening, please go to xo.cash and have a look at that, because that's what we're talking about. That's what we're making there. And if anything looks like it's abstract or it doesn't make sense or it's just word salad, I promise you it's not. Everything that's on there is really serious and something we're working on, and it's a very important problem, everything on there. So yeah, please have a look at it. We're very serious about it, and we think this is going to change the landscape of crypto, not only BCH. So looking forward to continuing building. Thank you to everyone who is working on it, and thanks to everybody out there who came to listen. Hope this was useful for you. Anything you guys wanted to wrap up with? You name?
Nothing. Thank you.
Nope. Yeah, Jonathan?
Yeah, in the spirit of redundancy, we should have another meeting called the value of redundancy and redundancy and redundancy.
It never stops. Nice. Jim, anything you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Nothing for me.
All right. Well, take care, everybody. It's good to talk with you, and we'll see you next time on General Bull number 38. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.